Then I went online on YouTube and I saw all kinds of strange, different ways of doing things. And that's fine. The science isn't settled and people will continue to evolve and doing things in different ways. But I just thought I'd show what it looks like in the field. And, for example, this is a very tall tree. This has definitely gotten, way too high. Although you'll notice that it's got leaves all the way around. One of the dangers of letting a tree get this tall is if they're close together, you'll end up with a canopy. It'll be just completely clear underneath a high canopy that is very, ridiculous. You can't do it that way. And there in the distance, there's really a tall tree. But mixed in with these trees, this tree looks like it might be 6 years old, 7 years old, looks very healthy. And I don't know that they've topped it or anything, probably not. It's filling out nicely and not growing too tall. And then there is a fairly new planting that doesn't really appear to be doing too well. Don't know what the problem is with that one. But, and then here is another probably 2 years old that's, it looks like it's satisfactory. And then over there is one maybe 3 years old that's doing quite well. And then we have one here that looks real good. Probably 6, 7 years old. And again, not growing very tall, but, it's got a lot of new growth. And here we are, February 1st in Southern California. And so that one's doing real well. Although I can't really see inside because I'll show you something here. Some of these trees are very old trees that have been, like this one here. This is a very old tree. And at some point you can see up there that they cut off the branches that were growing up even taller, and you can see new growth on, where they cut, and that'll eventually be productive. Although again, it might even have been better to cut this even lower, cut it down even lower, so that you don't end up with all your fruit way up high. But this is how these people are doing it here. And you might also notice that there's white paint that right after you cut it, you should do that, paint it, use latex paint or even whitewash. And then here's one. You can see this was a severely cut back. I mean, it might have been cut back to, 4 or 5 foot stumps. And, it seems like a shame, you don't get any production for a while, but it has to be done, and they will come back quite nicely. So this looks like it's pretty well managed at this point. Sometimes, you get behind, but here's another example where it was topped, but in my opinion, that's too high, but, with extension ladders, they'll be able to get up there and pick the fruit, but I just like them personally. I like them below about 15 feet, and this might be, 20 feet or so high. And here's another one. It's had a little work done to it, but it looks like that, judging by that trunk, it might be 10 years old. So it has been cut back at some point. There's a very old tree that's been cut back severely. But again, this will produce, and you'll notice, all these trees will have leaves. They'll be fully leafed out and have productive branches for fruit production. You don't want them all crowded close together, or you'll end up with that canopy situation that I mentioned. And again, I was surprised how many YouTube videos there were about avocado growing, and you know, look at them all and make up your own mind. But I saw one where somebody was taking a practically brand new, you know, little tree and cutting it at the top, and the theory was that it would branch out sooner. But to me, it didn't really seem like it made any sense, because they're going to flesh out and flush out, and you don't really need to mess with them, in my opinion, when they're, you know, less than 4 or 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years old. You shouldn't have to do much to them in the way of pruning. And this is Carpinteria along Foothill, or Highway 192, and this is just a fantastic area to grow avocados. They just love it here, the Haas avocado. And there's a lot of groundwater here too. The distant mountains, you know, might get up to 30 inches of rain up at the higher elevations, and it pours down, and it's absorbed here. And some friends of mine have some wells with very high standing water levels. You know, they don't seem to be in any peril of going dry. So anyway, in sum, if you're going to grow an avocado tree, I don't think you really need to do much to it. Let it grow, give it plenty of room. Look at this one here. Now again, I don't know. Oh yeah, see, it's an older tree, but a newly planted tree will eventually, you know, within 6, 7 years, it might look very similar to this, you know, in terms of being flushed out with growth. Now here's an example of what happens. You can look at this tree here. They've allowed it to get pretty tall, and you know, it's probably economic for them to pick it, and it's not, you know, really crazy tall, but awfully tall, and going to be difficult to pick. But you can see eventually these lower branches will come out this way and bear fruit. So that'll be fine. And then, you know, at some point they might want to, you know, they'll probably cut those at the higher elevations. And that looks nice right there. That might have been cut back a couple of years ago, and it's already, just within a couple years, you know, you've got all this new growth. And in another year or two, in fact, I can see blooms on those branches now, so this will start bearing fruit again pretty soon. So it's just ongoing, you know, it's ongoing. You let them grow, you cut them back when they get, you know, when they start crowding one another. Now, I did see one video on YouTube where the fellow suggested, you know, when the tree starts getting tall, is you go in and you maybe prune, cut back one or two of the branches that are, you know, reaching those real high levels. And I have heard that theory before, and that might be a reasonable thing, a reasonable suggestion. You know, you see one, say for example, those getting up there that tall. Well, you might track it back down and cut it at the source, you know, wherever that branch is connected down lower. So for the most part, here in Carpinteria, these people have probably had these farms in the families for a long time, and you know, other than occasional lapses, they know what they're doing, and for the most part, this appears to be a pretty well managed place. You'll see a tree like that one, and that's obviously not right. But you know, this is what you're going to find. Here's another example of allowing the trees to get too big, and they're becoming a canopy with no branches down low. It's all clear in here. But you know, this land is so valuable here. Okay, now here is a beautiful avocado orchard, and actually it's an old orchard that's been cut way back. You can see huge, you know, old trunks down below, and they cut them back severely, probably 4 or 5 feet, you know, with maybe 2, 3, 4 main branches above the trunk. The shade here, I can't really see that clearly, but look how beautiful these are. They're only about 12 feet tall, and they're probably spaced at, you know, 18, 20 feet apart, and there's room between them, and as long as they just keep after it, don't let it get out of hand, you know, this will be very productive. Get a lot of fruit off this, you know, maximum fruit production per acre. I think that's what everybody wants. Now you can see their irrigation system. They're on probably drip. I can see, looks like drip hose. Or no, I see they're mini sprinklers. Take that back. Yeah, and a mini sprinkler's probably better. It'll spray out maybe a 8-foot diameter and out underneath the tree, in the shade, out to the, well, actually, ideally with a thing like this, you almost have to water every square foot of it. It won't be wasted. These trees will gobble it up.